Now, let's get more on the Conservative former Minister Owen Paterson, who's resigned as an MP, leaving what he called the cruel world of politics. His announcement came hours after the government performed a U-turn that left him once again facing a vote to suspend him from the Commons for repeatedly breaching lobbying rules. In a statement, the Prime Minister paid tribute to Owen Paterson, saying he was very sad to lose a friend and colleague who he had known for decades. Well, with me now is Sonia Sodha, chief leader writer at The Observer, and John Stevens, who's deputy political editor at the Daily Mail. It's good to see you both. Thanks for joining us. John, I'm going to start with you because the suggestion is that it was the Mail what done it. Your front page today, of course, the voice of Middle England. I'm sure the Mail writers would claim, Tories supporting as well. You were very, very critical of the government's actions yesterday, and there's a sense that that may have helped turn the tide in this whole debate.
Well, Boris Johnson loves to talk about how he runs the people's government, but I think it's been quite clear over the last couple of days on this one that he's been on completely the wrong side of the argument to the rest of the public. I think most people could see the arguments quite clearly. Owen Paterson took £500,000 for these firms, did lobbying work which was found to clearly have broken the Commons rules. And rather than just passing that through like you'd expect the government to normally do, they ended up trying to get in this completely change the system, bringing in some new appeals panel. And people just thought it looked totally dodgy and that he was looking to fix the process. And clearly the government have realised that this just isn't a sustainable position and have had to row back from it.
Yeah, I mean, Sonia, Jacob Rees-Mogg said today that the mistake was to link this individual case of Owen Paterson with the process, the new process that we're trying to bring in, and we want to decouple that now because it's caused a furore and we're not going to get the kind of cross-party support that we need to have a credible process by which MPs are policed. But surely, was there any possibility that the major opposition parties would ever back this move, even if it wasn't linked to Owen Paterson's actual individual case?
Well, I think it's very clear that the Conservative attempts to reform the system were actually driven by wanting to get Owen Paterson off the hook, because MPs haven't been making a song and dance about this system in recent years. In fact, if you look at it, I mean, MPs say that there's a problem with it because there's no appeal system, because witnesses don't get heard by the committee. But if you look at it, actually, it's a committee that includes not just cross-party MPs, but 7 lay members. So it's a pretty strong system. And actually, if you look at the details of Owen Paterson's case, there's just no question that having witnesses appear to speak for him would have changed the outcome. He was found to have egregiously broken the rules several times. So it really, I mean, it's a screeching U-turn from the government. It's quite extraordinary. It shows not just a total lack of integrity that is quite in keeping with what we've seen in recent years, whether it's, you know, Priti Patel not resigning when she was found to have broken the ministerial code, whether it's questions about contracts, COVID contracts, really lucrative, being far more likely to go to those with ministerial contracts. So there's that issue. But there is also this issue around the fact that how did the government not see this coming? Lots of people were predicting this was going to happen. It's huge political mismanagement. They effectively got MPs, they told them they had to vote to get Owen Paterson off the hook, even though many were quite unhappy about doing that. And now they've got this huge political mess on their hands where they've done a U-turn in less than 24 hours, and MPs find that the government's changed position. So I think it was all along about Owen Paterson, and it was a massive, catastrophic political error. And it's very hard to see how they didn't see it coming down the track.
Okay, John, I mean, do you detect, from the Daily Mail's point of view, a pattern here as well? And as I say, you know, your paper, it does tend to back the Conservatives. The suggestion from Boris Johnson's critics is that he's well aware that he's got an 80-seat majority. He's well aware that the next election isn't for another 3.5 years. And that basically he feels he can get the stuff that he can get away with now that he certainly wouldn't be able to get away with, you know, further down the track. And he's going to chance his arm. Is that the kind of criticism that laced the words that were on your front page this morning?
I think you've seen over the last few months and the last couple of years The Labour Party has been desperate to get this line going, this attack line that Tory sleaze is back. And so far, it hasn't necessarily stuck. But I think this story has definitely got cut through, and MPs are fuming. As Sonia says, they were forced to vote for this move yesterday. They did so, and now Number 10 have U-turned. But the damage is already done. And you speak to MPs and they are absolutely livid with Number 10. They just question how Boris Johnson, the Downing Street operation and the chief whip could have got this so wrong, why they put them through this, and then decided actually we can't get away with it and changed course. But already they're getting loads of MPs from their constituents really angry about this. And part of the reason they're angry is this is totally unforced. Boris Johnson didn't need to do this. Owen Paterson's a former minister. He isn't one of Boris Johnson's current cabinet. He didn't have to go into backfill. He could have easily nodded through this 30-day punishment and we could have all moved on. But instead, they thought they would rip up the rules, change things, and it's completely exploded into this almighty mess, which I think a lot of voters will remember.
Yeah, I mean, Sonia, though, I mean, what's clear is that it wasn't the Labour Party necessarily that has come out of this looking rather proactive in forcing the government's hand. It's actually Conservative MPs who defied the whip. It's Conservative MPs who were this morning facing their mailbags full of constituents angry at this whole situation. And, you know, as John has pointed out, Labour still seems really quite weak in holding this government to account.
Well, I think at this stage of a parliament, so we're sort of 2 years in, 2 years after the country's just given Boris Johnson a huge majority, I think it is quite difficult for an opposition to get cut through, to be fair. I think people are much more interested in what the government's doing when we're still 2 to 3 years out of a general election. But I think the thing that's quite extraordinary is, as John just said, this was an unforced error. There was literally no need for the government to do this. I think if the government had done what, really would have been expected of them, which is that one of their MPs has been found to have egregiously broken the rules by an independent committee of cross-party MPs, if the government had just voted, if MPs had just voted for the punishment, which was the 30-day suspension, I suspect this would have all kind of gone away and Owen Paterson would have still been an MP, tomorrow. But they didn't. So this is a crisis, really, of the government's own making. And it's quite extraordinary that just 2 years after winning a general election, they've got this huge majority. They are making these really kind of quite basic political mistakes.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Sonia Sodha from The Observer and John Stevens from The Mail. Good to see you both. Thanks for joining us both. Thank you.